So I was driving into an industrial area today that accepts recycling and material and also takes medical waste. The medical waste bins are on the side of the building outside and you don't go inside. The facility is under maintenance all week and there hasn't been recycling being brought there, but I can take the medical waste there fine, so to my knowledge only one guy was working at the whole facility. An old black guy who I know. Anyways, I pull up to the side of the building today and there was a bald man who looked about 40 to 50 in a red shirt and jeans, no safety vest. He was scowling. I nodded at him and dropped off the medical waste. Now it gets weird next. It's about a 5-minute drive out to the place and it's surrounded by woods. When I pull out of the facility I see the same man standing on a porch across the street st a house. I'm 100% sure it was the same guy, same clothes, same scowl, and it isn't physically possible for him to have ran through the woods to get to this house. What the fuck happened? Was this paranormal? Anon as a kid 5-7ish years old at dad's house, large backyard. The property is bordered by forest. Be in the backyard with family, see something walking in the forest from right to left, appears to be some kind of anthropomorphic wolf man. It has a wolf body, but walks on 2 legs and wears clothes. No one else seems to see it. Never talked to anyone about this. Maybe not that interesting, but I had a weird dream when I was about 4 years old that I still remember like I just had it last night. A short dream but strange. At the time I lived with just my mom in a 2-bedroom house near the city. My bedroom had a bay window like in Pickerel and there was a nice view over a fairly large area of the city because we lived up on a hill. I slept alone in my room too with mom in the other bedroom. So I had this dream one night where I walked up to the bay window and climbed up on the seat and looked out the window. It was nighttime and I was looking up at the moon and it was huge. Not abnormally huge, just big, and it was a full moon. Then suddenly I became kind of frozen still and had this sense of dread. Then suddenly the moon moved like 100x faster than normal, moving in a straight line over the horizon as it normally would approaching daytime, but just really fast, and then the sun came up also really fast. As if about 8 hours just happened in like 5 seconds. There was no crazy movements or anything and no flashes or noises or anything out of the ordinary other than it all happened extremely fast and I was just frozen still. It was the weirdest sensation I've ever had and still remember it really well. And thinking about it now, it just seems like a really strange dream for a 4-year-old to have. It felt real though. I don't remember now anything about going to sleep that night, I just assume it was a dream. Sometimes I think maybe I was abducted by aliens or something like that, but I don't remember. When I was a teenager, my friends and I used to search for haunted locations on a website called Shadowlands Index. We lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, and we came across a place not too far away called Satan's Bridge, located on the border of North Carolina and Virginia. It was one of the closest haunted spots, so we would often visit. The story behind it involved numerous suicides and other creepy incidents spanning 100 years or so. On a few occasions, we stumbled upon animal bones and burned candles beneath the bridge. There was also talk about satanic cults performing rituals and sacrifices in the area. Nearby, there was a graveyard that people claimed to be a slave burial ground. After visiting the site around 30 times or even more, there was one particular night that stood out. It was about 2 a.m., and as usual, we couldn't park directly on the bridge, so our car was around 100 yards away. While we occasionally saw passing cars, they usually ignored us. However, on this night, a white van screeched to a halt. The back door swung open, revealing a group of middle-aged men. Their chilling invitation was, "If you really want to meet the devil, get in the van." We reacted instantly, running as fast as we could and making it to our car. With adrenaline pumping, we drove away. In hindsight, it's possible that those men were just local pranksters, but their unsettling aura and words gave off an eerie vibe. I can't help but wonder if they were connected to the rumored cult. I have a couple more of these stories from my days of going to these haunted places. The weirdest thing that's ever happened to me was my hallway closet door and bathroom cabinet doors slamming open at the same exact time. They're only like 9 feet away from each other. I can understand if the bathroom cabinet doors slowly worked themselves open somehow if I accidentally kicked them while washing my hands or whatever. And I can understand if I accidentally forgot to fully close my hallway closet door and it creaked open. But the force in which they opened and the fact that they both did it at the same time is unexplainable to me, besides knowing that one of my younger brothers died recently. They both slammed against the wall and made me jump when I heard them. Imagine if you got pissed off and opened a door so hard that it slammed into the wall. That's how they opened. Super creepy. And at the risk of removing all credibility from my first story, another really scary and shocking thing that happened to me when I was a little kid involved what can only be described as accidentally stumbling across some sort of satanic Illuminati ritual in a graveyard in Michigan at night. But I don't know if it's appropriate to share since it's more of a conspiracy theory related experience than a paranormal experience. The background for the story is that my dad wanted to take me to visit my great-grandparents' graves in Detroit back in like 1992 when I was super young. We're from the Washington, D.C. area, and so it took us several hours to drive there. We left in the morning and didn't arrive until around mid-afternoon. And it was winter, and so it got dark early. When we got there, we unpacked and greeted relatives for a couple of hours. My father then wanted to take me to visit my great-grandparents' graves right away for whatever reason rather than wait until the next day. And so he put me in the car with my grandfather and we drove to the graveyard. By the time we arrived, it was completely dark, and so we thought that we were the only people there. The graveyard was absolutely huge. We drove down a single-lane gently winding road for about 100 yards or so with our headlights on. It was pretty creepy. The road went over a small hill and turned right. When we got over the hill and made the right turn around a row of gravestones, we suddenly lit up a group of about a dozen men wearing monk-like robes with hoods that were standing in a semicircle around a large and elaborate gravestone. They all leered up at us under their hoods very menacingly, and I was immediately filled with a kind of primal terror like I've never felt before because they all gave off a very strong evil vibe. There was also a black limo and 2 black Cadillac sedans parked on the side of the road. These men weren't teenaged or college-aged pranksters or weird Wiccan LARPers or whatever. I could just tell by looking at these men that they were rich and powerful due to the business suits, nice shoes, watches, and well-cut hair that they had under their robes. After we were staring at them in shock for a few seconds from inside our car, we were suddenly blinded by the high beams from one of these Cadillacs. My grandfather immediately told my dad to get us the fuck out of there, and so my dad put the car in reverse, swung around to look out the back window with his hand on the back of my grandfather's headrest, and drove as fast as he could down the same road that we just took. Even more terrifying, the Cadillac aggressively chased us and only stayed about 5 feet away from our bumper as it continued to blind us with its high beams, which caused my dad to almost crash. We finally made it back to the entrance in reverse. And my dad did an aggressive backwards J-turn which slammed me against the car door, put the car in drive, and sped down the main road. When we looked back, the Cadillac stopped at the entrance, turned its headlights off, and watched us drive off. We went back the next day to visit my great-grandparents' graves, but this time we went in the middle of the day, and both my father and grandfather brought handguns with them. Still to this day I have no idea who those people were or what exactly they were doing that night. But the fact that they had a professional security detail further proved to me that they were some sort of powerful elites. And so it seems like the satanic Illuminati conspiracy theories actually have some validity to them, as crazy as that sounds. This week I've been working on Indian reservation land, and while I was driving on some back roads I saw a translucent column of golden light in a farmer's field. It caught my eye, so I looked back again and it was still there. I drove around a bend to get closer to it, but it disappeared when I rounded the corner. There were no clouds in the sky to create columns of sunlight shining through the clouds, and there was nothing else around to reflect off of. It was just me and cow fields. I can't find anything to tell me what this is or if it means anything spiritually. I've witnessed a few UFOs in my life so far, but one of the strangest still lingers in my mind. I was going to visit my parents and had to get to the airport. To get there, the city provides a direct train to the terminals. I get on at 9 a.m. and sit down by the window. I look out across the train yard and mindlessly stare at nothing as I begin to see what looks like an empty plastic bag drift in the wind. I keep watching it for some reason as it falls like a plastic bag in the wind would, turning in on itself, folding, reshaping, etc. Until I get to some scaffolding, when I realize that it may not be an actual plastic bag. When it reaches the scaffolding, it stops. Dead on. And then begins to float sideways along the scaffolding. By this time it looks like a crumpled ball, but still folding in on itself. It reaches the end of the scaffolding and then begins to go back the way it came. Still doing the weird folding and crumpling. I follow it as it ascends further up along a skyscraper which is directly opposite the train yard, and lose sight of it as it drifts behind the building. I look in the sky to see if it'll appear on the other side, but then see another one of these things drifting across the sky. With the sky being the primary backdrop, it was much more translucent. Then in a bright flash of light skin to a sparkler, it completely disappears. I was the only one that saw it, wasn't high or drunk or anything. Still can't find any other testimony from any other UFO witnesses to match anything like it. This happened sometime from 2001 or 2002. I grew up on horror as a genre and visited supposedly haunted places. But this is the only thing I can claim to have 100% no explanation for. And it continues to give me the creeps. My grandparents had a Howdy Doody dummy on display in their basement living area. Placed on a small rocking chair. It was specifically a model without exaggerated facial features. Similar to the right, I was trusted to be satisfied with reading books in the basement as a child during the relatively quiet summers the first spent. And I was. Mostly. I was free to go outside and catch frogs. Watch older shows. And be generally unsupervised when I wasn't needed. The doll did not catch my attention until about 4 days into a 2-week stint, where I started to think I was catching movement out of the corner of my eye when I was watching television. I swear to fucking God that. From the general direction of the doll, and at around 2 to 3 a.m. in a dark room illuminated only by the glow of the TV. A marble dropped on the floor and bounced once or twice. Landing a few feet away from me, I glanced at the doll, which was positioned next to the television cabinet. And its fucking eyes shut and fluttered open, like it was blinking. Obviously I screamed, woke up a few people, got mildly scolded, and was temporarily banned from having free access to the coffee maker, off the chance it was excess caffeine that was making me see weird shit. There were marbles in the house which was present alongside some other vintage toys, but none in the living room. They were present in the small home library on the same floor, but I didn't touch them. I spent as little as possible in the basement after that incident. When my dad was a kid, he was visited by 2 aliens who entered his room and healed an injury he was dealing with at the time. He was a believer his whole life after that. My grandfather was an officer in the RCAF during the war, and stayed on into the 50s working in the Arctic on the DU line. He saw UFOs up there, and he amassed a large collection of audio tapes of interviews that he and his colleagues had with witnesses and abductees. Whenever I would visit him as a kid, he and my dad would stay up late into the night listening to these tapes. My grandfather evidently had to sign a lot of documents swearing himself to secrecy, and he took those agreements very seriously. But near the end of his life, he played a few specific tapes for my dad and basically said that they were the real deal apparently. My brother and I had a shared shadow person experience that I posted about in a thread a while back. Be me. 12, getting ready to leave for middle school with dad one dark winter morning, still half asleep while I look around the house for my shoes. Dad is standing by the front door while I walk into the adjacent living room. Shoes are at the doorway, so I don't bother turning on any lights, reaching down for shoes when suddenly the room is filled with a disembodied male voice booming the words choo choo. Nearly jump out of my skin and sprint over to my dad. Who also heard this. Both of us are confused at what the hell that was. Investigate, but nothing is out of place. Move on with the day and just brush it off, still trying to make sense of this bizarre experience. Never encountered anything like that again. I have other strange stories from growing up in that house though, if anyone is interested. I'll be sharing some more stories. This particular one is from 2015-2016. 2 of my friends and I were out late in the upper part of town. In the mood for some scares and spookiness, we decided to visit a park known for its paranormal stories, Deadman's Park. The origin of its name comes from the fact it was built over 2 graveyards, and to this day some bodies still remain buried underneath the park. My friends and I sat down at one of the benches on the light side of the park. Looking across the other side, we noticed the lack of light and how airy it looked, so we decide to sit in the darker side. Everything is fine at first. We hang out and chat for a bit with the occasional mention of possibly seeing a ghost. Coincidentally, my friend becomes stiff and says to us, "Anon, what the fuck is that?" He points his finger down an area that is significantly darker than the rest of the park. He continues, "What is that thing? Anon, you can see it, right? Please tell me you can see it." I tell him I don't see anything, but he keeps insisting something is there. My third friend does not have his glasses with him and tells us he can't see it. After this exchange I take one more look, and I unfortunately see it. What I saw was a gigantic, black silhouette, hunching to its side. I remember sitting there both amazed and very frightened, thinking, holy shit, this isn't good. As I continue to observe the thing, I notice the floor below it is hazy, you know, like when desert heat distorts the ground. Yeah, like that. I notice the being is inching closer and coming our way. I ask my friends what we should do, and we decide to head to my place since it is the closest. Once we get to my house we decide to hit the sack. My second friend and I talk about what we saw and laugh it off. He eventually falls asleep. I decide to do so myself when all of a sudden, the gate violently closes, followed by a cat hissing. My third friend is awoken by the gate slamming and looks up out the window. "Anon, what is that?" he asks. I reply, "It's just a cat, don't worry about it." He stays silent for a couple seconds and says, "That isn't a cat, Anon." Now mind you, my window was about 10 to 15 feet off the ground. I insist it is, and he lays back down. I had always wondered what exactly my third friend saw outside my window that night. Recently, I brought up the incident with my second friend and he explained to me that he had looked into different types of ghosts. And his conclusion was what we saw may have been the Hat Man. Me 28 at the time. Atheist. Living in a lead and rat and roach infested basement apartment in a bad neighborhood in a bad city. Facing homelessness soon. Making dirt shit pay, delivering pizzas under the table for a place affiliated with the mob. Absolute worst my life has ever been. Walk around with my gun late at night hoping someone tries to mug me so I can get into a gunfight and die. Pray one day for the fuck of it, asking for a sign one day around noon. My smoke detector just says fire one time only in a female voice. My fire alarm has never done this before. And I've set it off on accident smoking cigarettes or burning food. It is always a normal smoke detector alarm noise. Never speaking. Check the oven and stove. It's off. Call landlord. Nothing going upstairs. Chalk it up to a glitch or something. Go outside for my nightly suicidal walk. 10 hours later, sirens and fire trucks everywhere. The diner I get breakfast at, 3 doors down, is on fire, and a big fire. They had to shut down and I'm not sure the building is there anymore. Parents ask me a few days later to come move in with them in a rural area 1 state over. Life has improved greatly since then, still not 100% but on the road to better things. I am not an atheist anymore. I don't know what that was, but it was a sign from somebody. Be me. Got locked out of the house by my bipolar disorder mother. Living in DC, staying out of a homeless shelter. Meet this older black dude. He shows me the ropes of where to get food and clothes and showers, etc. I'm pretty deep into laws of attraction at this point. Been manifesting dimes like crazy, they're often overlooked, so when I'll need one I'm sure I'll be able to find one. Never take a dime I don't need. Be in 7 to 11 and we're 10 cents short of our total, I think it was just for some sandwiches. Older guy starts panicking, trying to talk to the cashier. I tell him hold on, it's just a dime, there's bound to be one around here somewhere. Look down, there's a dime. Guy tells people I can create miracles at a church group later because of this experience. Be me in 11th grade, a new girl transfers to my school. We have different classes so we don't talk very much, occasionally talk while walking home since she moved into my neighborhood. One night I have a dream that she is working at a small store in our town, nothing weird about the dream. But I feel compelled to ask her about it the next time we talk. When I ask her if she has ever thought of working there, she says that she actually just got hired to work there part-time the day before. Think, oh, she must have told me she was applying, but don't ever remember her telling me that. A month passes, I have a dream where she is in a car listening to a specific Nirvana song. The next day her friends pull up next to me as I'm walking home to ask if I want a ride. I get in the back seat. Another month passes, I have a third dream about her. In the dream she hands me my wallet. But for some reason I have duplicates of all my cards and can't find what I'm looking for. The same day I have the dream, I go to get the mail. In the mail the bank sent me 2 duplicate debit cards. Despite the fact my current card wasn't expired and I didn't request a new one. Now I'm really weirded out. Because there is no way I could have known that would happen. A bit more time passes and now it's the middle of winter. I have a final dream about her. The two of us are standing in an abandoned factory in my town and night in the dead of winter with snow falling outside. She is facing away from me at first, but turns briefly to look at me a few times. Eventually she turns around and suggests we dance. And we slow dance for a bit. While we're dancing, she tells me that it isn't easy to dance with a ghost. I ask her what she means, but she won't say. I wake up crying uncontrollably. A couple weeks later she and a friend drive to a party in the next town over on a Friday evening. They were going to stay with a relative of the friend that night, but decide to drive back at 2 a.m. instead. Her friend is driving too fast and she hits a patch of black ice on the road. The car veers off the road down a hill into a rocky area. Both girls dead instantly from the crash. It's one of my biggest regrets that I never told her about the last dream I had of her. But I'm not sure what I could have done even if I did. I've only ever had very minor dreams seem to come true since then, though my brother and grandfather talk a lot about dreams they have that come true.
Mosey on down to the Atomic Shaman Trading Post. We have t-shirts, decals, refrigerator magnets and other swag for sale. What better way to show your support for the show? Our merch can only be found on t.pub/link/Atomic Shaman Trading Post. Like, share and subscribe to the channel, and be sure to ring the notification bell. You can follow us on Twitter at Motel and RV Park. Catch the live streams on Rumble. Listen to text-to-speech stories on Atomic Shaman TTS on YouTube.